Hello and welcome to Keep It Fictional, the book podcast from Port Moody Public Library. I am your host today, Al, and I'm joined by my book friends Sadie and Virginia. So today it is Halloween. Happy Halloween, my book friends. And for Halloween, we wanted to talk about things that scare us. Are we scared of spiders? Are we scared of snakes? Our own shadows? There's so many things in the world that is possible to be scared of, but I'm interested to see what it is that my book friends have decided to talk about that scares them. So let's start with Sadie. What have you got for us today?
Right. So as many topics these days, kind of struggled with this topic. And the reason for that is because I try not to read about things that scare me. And I didn't have a lot of books because of that I kind of had ready to go that I could talk about. And since I'm kind of a wimp, I didn't want to find something that was going to really, really freak me out and cause me to not be able to sleep for a week, like when I watched Cabin in the Woods. So I decided to look for something that I do have a fear of, but that I knew would not actually cause me to stay up at night, which usually is something that involves non-human elements. And by non-human, I don't mean like supernatural elements, although that also I am okay with, but non-human, I mean animals or insects or other kind of that sort of fear. And so I think that I probably mentioned this on the podcast before, but I grew up in the Kootenays, in Nelson. And in a lot of ways, Port Moody and Nelson are very similar. They're both cities that are surrounded by forests and nature and the animals that live in the forests and nature. And when I was at school, we would always be taught how to handle ourselves if we ever came face to face with a bear or a cougar or another wild animal. And while there are definite strategies for dealing with coming face to face with bears, you can make yourself as big as you can. You make yourself really loud as you slowly kind of back away from them. There weren't quite as many strategies when it came to cougars. Cougars will stalk you. They will stalk you through the forest, and just when you think you are safe, they will attack you. And they have no mercy. Cougars have no mercy. Bears protect their young, cougars just hunt you. So I grew up with a fairly healthy fear of cougars. So when I went searching for a book, I decided to try and find something that talked about cougars. And so I did sort of a general Google search, novels that involved cougars, and this book came up, Wayward by Emilia Clarke. After reading a little bit of description, it didn't immediately mention cougars, but I figured seemed interesting enough that I was willing to kind of give it a try. I imagined the cougars would come into play at some part in the book. So after finishing the book, which I very much enjoyed, I can tell you that if you do also have a fear of cougars, then you have absolutely nothing to worry about. This book has absolutely no cougars in it whatsoever. Not a single cougar is mentioned throughout this entire book. So I have no idea why it came up when I did a search for cougars. Honestly, not a clue. But anyways, I was in luck because while it did not have cougars, it did have a lot of insects. And insects are something that, while I don't know if I am necessarily outright afraid of, I definitely do not like them. So I figured it still fit the category enough that I am going to talk about it. It also involves witches, which I think is a good fit for Halloween and a good fit for this time of year. So yes, so this is Wayward by Emilia. The year is 2019, and Kate Ayres has made a decision. She is leaving. And this time, she will not be going back. She's terrified. She's thought this through, though, She has the cell phone that she bought with the cash that she's been hiding away. She has the car that's still in her name. And most importantly, she has her great aunt's cottage, the one that was kind of strangely left to her when her great aunt died, and that thankfully Simon knows absolutely nothing about. She can do this, and it will work. It has to work because it's not just Kate's life anymore that she's fighting for. It's also her baby's, the baby that she just found out she was having. And once Simon finds out about the baby, Kate knows that he will never, ever let her leave. So Kate grabs her bag with her hastily packed clothes and flees the London apartment, heart pounding in her chest. She just knows that Simon will come home at the last second and find her fleeing. And she honestly doesn't know if she will survive what he will do to her. However, luck or something more is on Kate's side. And she not only makes it to her car unnoticed, but also out of the garage and out of the city. Until many hours later, she finds herself in Crow's Beck in Cumbria and at Wayward Cottage, a small, run-down home which was last lived in by her great aunt Violet, who had died the year before. In 1942, the world is at war. Still 3 years and a lot of fighting away from the end of the war, the people in England have learned to live with the rationing and the letters from the front telling them that their loved ones will never come home again. However, at Orton Hall in Cumbria, England, 16-year-old Violet Ayres has been kept separate from much of the violence. In fact, she's been kept separate from the entire outside world, outside of Orton Hall, for her entire life. Her father has forbidden her from ever leaving the grounds. And to be honest, Violet isn't too bothered by this. She loves the grounds of Orton Hall, the forests, and the beautiful big beech tree, and all the birds and the bugs and the insects, especially Goldie, the jumping spider who lives in her room. Now, she would happily spend her whole life climbing trees and studying the bugs that she discovered. However, her father doesn't share this same sentiment. While he doesn't want her to leave the grounds, he also doesn't believe that a proper young lady should spend her time climbing trees, ripping her skirts, and communing with insects. He informs Violet that her cousin Frederick, a soldier stationed in Libya, is coming to stay, and if she isn't able to act like a proper young lady during his visit, then she will be sent away to a finishing school. He goes on to add, almost under his breath, that he had hoped Violet wasn't going to end up like her mother, but it looks like maybe he was wrong. Violet's mother. Violet longs to know more about her mother. She had died in childbirth when Violet was very young, and she doesn't remember anything about her. Despite asking Nanny Metcalf and the other maids in the house, no one will really tell her anything. Now, she once overheard Nanny Metcalf and Mrs. Poole talking. Uncanny was the word that they used to describe her mother. The whole thing was very strange. The master's parents would never have approved of him marrying a girl from the village with no proper family, but they had died in a carriage accident right before the wedding, so there wasn't much that they could say about it. But it was all very strange. It almost seemed like the master had been bewitched. All that Violet has of her mother is a necklace with a strange W etched into it. In 1619, Altha Wayward has been accused of murder. Murder by way of witchcraft. Yeoman and good God-fearing man John Milburn has been trampled by his cows in the early morning of New Year's Day, 1619. Accused of communicating with the animals as her familiars, Altha, a healer of only 21 years old, who has lived on her own since her mother died a few years earlier, was identified by a neighbor as a witch and the cause of the trampling. And so, she has been held in a dingy cell in Lancaster Castle for the last 10 days, having been given nothing but stale bread and dirty water. However, this is better than the absolutely nothing that she had been given in Crow's Beck before she was even brought to Lancaster. Finally, she is brought up for her trial to face the jury, the judge, and the witnesses, all of whom already believe her to be guilty and to be a witch. The first witness brought forward is John Milburn's wife, Grace. Altha knew that they would bring Grace to speak. However, knowing this doesn't make it any easier for Altha to look at Grace. Knowing that only 7 years earlier, the two of them had been inseparable. As close as sisters, they did everything together. That is, until the night that Grace's mother died. Unable to be saved by the doctors or by Altha's own mother, this event would cause not only the end of Altha and Grace's friendship, but also the reason that Grace will forever blame Altha for not being able to save her mother. And so, Altha sits in the courtroom trying to look meek and innocent while she awaits Grace's testimony and her own fate. These are just the beginnings of the 3 stories which make up Wayward. The stories of 3 women, each living in their own time, facing abuses and terrors and challenges, and also showing courage and perseverance and determination. 3 women who are tied together by name, by family, and by an uncanny ability to communicate with the natural world, the insects and the crows and the cows. The stories of Altha, Violet, and Kate are intertwined, and each perspective reveals a bit more about the Wayward family and its history. Whether it's Kate trying to learn more about her great aunt Violet and her own ancestors as she tries to understand who she really is and create a new and safe life for herself and her child away from her abusive ex-boyfriend. Or Violet, desperately trying to learn anything about her mother, the mother that she hardly knew, who her father refuses to talk about and who he hopes Violet won't turn out to be like. Or Altha, as she recounts her story, writing down her final days in the jail cell while she awaits her fate. Each piece of this narrative blends with the others to create a rich history and a very compelling story. I would say that while much of the focus of this book is on witches, if you're looking for a book about kind of spell casting, magic wielding witches, this probably is not the book for you. But I absolutely loved this book. It was, as I said, it was compelling, and the story just kind of draws you in. And each of the different storylines pieces together a different portion of this story, and each kind of perspective that you see fills in the gaps for the other ones. It, as I've mentioned in numerous other episodes, it has the multiple perspectives at multiple different timelines that I absolutely love reading. So if you like that kind of book, this is definitely a book for you. It definitely does have insects in it. So if you are someone who is not okay with insects, then maybe not the book for you. It is not the entire focus of the book, but there are some pretty creepy insect descriptions. At one point, one of the characters is tormented by swarms of insects, and so if you're not okay with swarms of insects, might not be the right book for you. But it was enough of insect focus for me to kind of be a bit wary about it, but not so much that I lacked sleep, which is what was important for me. So yeah, I would say that if you're wanting something that kind of dives into history, it looks at the witch trials a little bit, or at least one of the witch trials. It shows not only the unfairness kind of the way that women have been treated, but also the strength of those same women to push forward, to kind of persevere. And it's mixed with a very strong connection to the natural world. And I said, as long as you're okay with a description and explanations of insects, then I think this would probably be a good book for you. No cougars. Not sure why there are no cougars. I was kind of excited for there to be a cougar in this book, but there were absolutely no cougars in it. But that's okay. No cougars, lots of insects. That is Wayward by Emilia Clarke.
That sounds actually quite fantastic, and I'm find myself wondering if maybe the colloquial meaning of cougar was involved. in that story instead.
I wondered as well, but there's not a ton of that type of kind of interactions either. So I
Okay.
don't know. I don't know.
Huh. Interesting. Well, insects definitely are something that creep me out, so might be something to check out. I like getting creeped out. So let's move on to Virginia. What have you got for us today?
Yes, I am, speaking of insects, I am deeply afraid of bugs, as many of you know. Any kind of bugs, I just don't do well with them. And having moved to and lived in Vancouver for for quite a few years now, there's one type of bugs that I am kind of glad that I don't see as much anymore. Now, let me be clear. I totally believe that you exist in Canada. Okay. I'm not doubting it at all. So you don't have to start showing your face to me. I'm okay with that. It's really worked out really well that you and I just stay in our own corner. So let's just keep it that way. So yeah, please don't take this as a challenge and show your face to me now. But the bug that I am talking about is cockroaches. Hong Kong is full of cockroaches. They are everywhere, and I still remember seeing them when you're sleeping. They're on the walls, they're on the floor, they are everywhere. And the worst kind is the ones that fly. Those are the worst. They are just pure nightmare. And you just have to dodge them because they're just flying everywhere. It's just the grossest thing. So, listeners, I hope you appreciate the dedication that we have for this book chat. I hope you see how seriously we take every weekly topic, because if the assignment today is to read something that scares us, that is what we are going to do. So for today, I read a book with cockroaches. And the book is called The Passion According to G.H. It is by Clarice Lispector. And the version that I had was published by New Directions and translated by Idra Novi. Lispector is a Ukrainian-born Brazilian writer. She's been called one of the 20th century's most mysterious writers, and this book came out in 1964. Now, this is my first Lispector novel. I have never read her before, and I will tell you after describing the book if this cockroach book of hers is also going to be my last. But first, the plot, which is kind of non-existent. It is a story of our main character, GH, recounting an incident that happened the day before. And GH woke up yesterday morning and decided that today is the day I'm going to go clean up that storage room. Now, her maid has been using it as her bedroom, but she's no longer working for her. So GH figures, it was a storage room before, and now then it was someone else's room. It must be a mess. It must be full of stuff. So she is looking forward actually to decluttering because she do like organizing. But much to her dismay, when she opened the door, the room is pretty much bare. There's nothing in it. There is the bed, but even like on top of the bed sheets have been like, ripped off from the mattress. So it's like there's nothing there. There's like a little wardrobe. That's kind of it. There was no clutter at all for her to clean. Not only that, she felt that the room is dry. It's as if someone has not closed the curtains or the windows for the last, I don't know, however many years, and the sun has been shining brightly in and just sucking up all the moisture, and everything is just so dry in there. And she's get irritated because there shouldn't be a room in her house that is dry. She's not that type of person. So she thinks about like bringing in buckets and buckets of water and just splashing it on the floor, and then like wetting like towels and cloths and just wiping everything and making everything moist and wet again, because that is how her house should be. And then she looked at the wardrobe. She's like, oh, you know what? Maybe everything is just stuck in there. Maybe when I open the door, everything will come out because they are just like hiding everything in there. So she walked towards the wardrobe and she's hoping that there will be something for her to clean there. But it was hard for her to open the door because the room is not so big. The bed is kind of in the way. So she has to push the bed aside so she can open the door properly. And she stick her head in there. Of course, it's like the sun is shining. So it takes a while for her to adjust to the darkness inside the wardrobe. And she's looking in there. And when she finally could see, she could tell that there's nothing in there either. It's pretty bare also. And then in the corner of her eye, she saw some movement. There's a cockroach, a pretty big cockroach, and looks maybe fairly old because it's moving very slowly. Now, Cheech doesn't like cockroaches. I don't think she's terrified of them like I am, but she thought, ugh, gross. And so she stick her head back out and she was just going to like leave the room and find that buckets of water so that she can like clean. But she forgot that she moved the bed. So she tripped over it and then she fell on the floor. As she's lying there, waiting for the pain to go away so she can get up again, she sees that the cockroach is slowly emerging from the wardrobe. It's slowly coming out. And so, in a panic, she didn't know what to do. So she slammed the door of the wardrobe shut, hoping to kill the cockroach. But she didn't slam it hard enough. So she can see now the cockroach is stuck, half in, half out. And it's still moving. It's still alive. It's not dead yet. And she can see stuff coming out from the cockroach because it's squished. And it is at this point that I closed the book and I got up and I'm like, I'm going to go take a shower now. I couldn't. And so I went in there, I stood in the hot water for as long as I can, just so that I can wash everything off. And then came back out and tried again. And this is when the book, I think it was a good place to take the shower because it was sort of at the book where I think it focuses now more on sort of what this encounter with the cockroach made GH think about. And there's still definitely lots of references to that half dead cockroach and stuff from the cockroach and all of that. But it's very much focused on GH contemplating, like, what does it mean to be a human? What is the self? What is the other? Like how do I become who I am? And the similarity between her and the cockroach that she's seeing right now, and life and death and heaven and hell, and like all the epiphanies that scare her, that she couldn't quite figure out, can she still be the person that she was before this encounter with the cockroach, and how it has changed her. And all this thinking leads to what is known as the most shocking ending in Brazilian literature. And now I actually read about the ending before I read the book because I was just only wanted to read a little bit more about the book to see if I can deal with this when I was sort of researching potential books for the episode. But I guess the ending was so memorable that like it was mentioned like in the second line of whatever I was reading. And I'm like, darn it, now I know what happened. And I didn't want it because I'm the type of reader that like if I know about like a even just a major event that is going to happen or the ending, I find myself just like anticipating it throughout the whole book. And also that I don't feel like I will experience the book the same way if I don't know what is going to happen. So I hate it when I find out, and I very often I would just like stop reading. I won't even like touch the book if I knew the ending. However, I think because it's probably for the best that I know what happened, because I don't know if I would be able to survive that ending if I didn't know it ahead of time what is going to happen, and I will let you discover that yourself. But yeah, this is, as I mentioned, the first Lispector novel that I read, and it turns out that it is also the translator Idra Novi's first Lispector novel. She read it in college, and Idra Novi is like a award-winning novelist herself. And she said that when she reads this book, she was so riveted that she immediately read everything else that Lispector wrote. She even went to learn Portuguese just so that she can learn how Lispector's voice sounded like in the original. And I have to say, I actually absolutely agree with her sentiment. I also felt the compulsion to go read everything that Lispector has written. I feel like it is that kind of, I'm going to use the word devotion. I think it's devotion that this author can inspire in her readers. And I went to borrow that the complete short story collection right away from the library. I read a couple of her stories because I wasn't sure. I was told that this is the Passion According to GH is kind of like her most mystical novel, and I wasn't sure it is an outlier or whether that's just how she writes. And after reading 2 or 3 stories, yep, this is definitely the way she writes. And I went and bought myself the copy so that I can like have that 600 page of Lispector waiting for me at home every day. I even ILL the biography, which is written by one of their English translator, Benjamin Moser. And I don't care about biographies. I don't like reading memoirs, but I just want to learn everything that I can about this person. I am just so obsessed with how her brain works, how her thinking works. And this book, like whether you like cockroaches or not, this is definitely not a book for everyone, I think, because not much happened. Barely anything happened. It's kind of like just her inner monologue in some ways. And I know a lot of readers have pointed out that, like, a lot of people would just be like, this is just not working for them because nothing happens. But I'm just so fascinated by this person. I'm so fascinated by her writing. And that question when people ask like, oh, what books will you bring along to a deserted island? This will be the book. This will definitely be in my bag because I feel like every single sentence you can just like mull over and contemplate for days. And so if I'm stuck on an island, this will be the book that I can just keep reading and rereading again and just think about every single sentence. It would take me a very long time to like really fully comprehend what I'm reading. And it is also a book that Lispector herself said it best corresponded to her demands as a writer. So I'm really glad that I actually picked this book as my first Lispector novel. I feel like I've been kind of rewarded for doing my homework properly. So yeah, if you are looking for something unique, if you're looking for something that will spark like many, many existential crises, which is what this book does, I would recommend you check it out if you're curious. Check out The Passion According to GH by Clarice Lispector, translated by Idra Nove.
Oh man, that sounds interesting, but also like soul-rending in a good way. So might have to check it out, but yeah, just the contemplation of a half-dead cockroach seems like something that it would be hard to make something interesting out of, but it sounds like the Spectre has managed it, which is fantastic. So now let's move into our existential question for the episode. As we are doing our sort of Halloween episode, I thought that it would be appropriate to ask about monsters. So, what is your favorite monster and why?
The first thing that came to mind, first thing that came to mind because I was thinking the same thing, like thinking of Halloween, was werewolf, only because this is my current favorite Squishmallow. That's the only reason why. Werewolf came to mind right away. I'm just like werewolf because I love the Squishmallow. Anyway, but that's really not a good answer to this question at all. Because I don't care about werewolves in any way. So when I was thinking about like that, like something that scared me, like Halloween, something that scared me, I have to go with, even though it's not really technically a monster, but we learn from Sadie's book last week that monster doesn't really always mean monster. I was thinking about like a Sadako in The Ring, because she scared the crap out of me. Like I remember that is the movie that I cannot deal with. Like every time I look at my TV, I just imagine her crawling out of it. Like I'm not, yeah. So I love her. It's like one of those things that's like, I love to be scared also. So it's just kind of like, oh, I'm so scared of you, but I can't help it. And I also like kind of keep track of her. She has a YouTube channel. Yeah, like she has a YouTube channel. It's pretty hilarious. But anyway, so I would say Sadako from The Ring would be my choice.
As I mentioned, I do my best to avoid things that scare me. I don't enjoy being scared. I'm not one of those people who enjoys being scared. I eventually had to tell my friend and my husband that no, I would not be going to Fright Nights with them anymore. I just couldn't handle it anymore. I would sit outside eating deep fried Oreos while they would go through the haunted houses, and it was not the best time. So when I think about monsters, I don't necessarily think about the ones that are really, really, really going to creep me out. I feel like it's a little bit of a cop out to just say witches, because I absolutely love witches. Um, I would like to be a witch. I wish I was a witch. I still imagine that one day I'm going to learn that I am a witch in a charmed style. One day I'm going to wake up and find I have magical powers. But apart from that, I am actually going to go to Greek mythology, as I so often do, and say Cerberus, who is the three-headed dog who guards the underworld. And just because it's quite a vicious creature in the actual myths, it has been made to not be so in more kind of recent media. But yeah, no, I like the idea that they have a three-headed dog that guards the underworld. So I'm going to say Cerberus.
All right, I'm going to be incredibly basic here, and I just really like vampires. I love vampire media. I think that it's a lot of fun. Um, just especially like I have a lot of sort of guilty pleasure media that revolves around vampires. I like the first couple books in the Anita Blake series by, I believe it's Laurel K. Hamilton. The first book is literally called Guilty Pleasures. Um, I love the Vampire Hunter D series by Hideaki Kikuchi. I really like the um, Interview with the Vampire TV series that came out recently. So vampires are just a creature that I am interested in and find really compelling. So that would be my favorite monster.
How do you feel about what we do in the shadows?
I love it.
Okay, good.
It's so funny. Oh my gosh.
I love them so much.
It's so good. I need to watch more of the TV show. I've mostly just seen the movie.
Oh, the TV show is the best. You need to watch the TV show. It's so good. It's just,
Mhm.
oh, yeah.
I need to. I'm just really bad at watching TV shows. All right, moving on to our final book for today. So, when it came to things that scare me, I went a little more abstract. What I am really scared of is memory loss and not being able to trust my own mind. And that is a big theme in the book that I'm going to talk about for today. Um, I am going to be talking about Mr. Magic by Kirsten White, and it revolves around a children's television show that people remember, but that there doesn't seem to be any evidence of on the internet. So people question, well, am I remembering it correctly? Did it really happen? What is real here? And then we also have our protagonist who doesn't have any memories from before she was 8. So we have sort of a 1-2 punch of not being able to trust your memory and not having your memory. So there's a show from you remember from your childhood, just barely. It was your favorite show, though you can't remember any of the plots or individual episodes or even really the names of the friends who made up the circle. But you remember how it made you feel, the magic rush of seeing those children stand in a circle, sing their song, and toss the cape into the center of the circle. And that's when he appeared, with his cape and top hat and looming presence. Nobody agrees on what Mr. Magic was. A man? A puppet? But everyone agrees that you never saw his face. But it ended. Some people say they saw it, Mr. Magic disappearing, or the set crumbling to the ground or catching on fire. Of course, that's not possible. They never broadcast something like that, but people say they remember something terrible happening in that last episode. But no trace remains of it. No clips, no old VHS stashed in the back of a closet. It's like it never existed, except in your memories. And posts about it online always seem to disappear. Until now. Mr. Magic opens on a ranch where our protagonist Val works, helping run camps for young kids to learn how to ride horses and take care of the animals. It's the same kind of day as every day, but today something important changes. Her father dies. Val has lived at the ranch as long as she can remember, always with her father. He had rules for them: never leaving the ranch, no doctors, never going on the internet, never watching television. He never said good night or I love you at the end of the day, just safe. Though Val has never known exactly what they were saying safe from. She has no memories from before they came to the ranch when she was 8 years old, and she has a feeling it's a good thing she doesn't remember. There's always been a creeping guilt that she's felt, that she did something wrong, and that's why they're out here. Now that her father has passed, though, things are different. Val's boss, Gloria, tells her that she put the reception details for Val's father's funeral on Facebook. He's at rest, safe now. No one is going to come for him, she tells Val. But Val is still unsure, because she's never known whether they were hiding for her father's sake or hers. Still, what's done is done, and more people come to the reception than Val expected. And when she bumps into a man with glasses, she feels suddenly like she knows him. But from where? He stares at her and calls her Valentine, which nobody on the ranch knows is her real name, and bursts into tears. The man with the glasses introduces himself as Isaac, and two other men, Javi and Marcus, join him. They also recognize Val, and though she feels a sense of recognition, she knows she doesn't know these men. They remember her from before. Are you coming to the reunion? Marcus asks. As they talk, it comes out that there is a reunion podcast happening for the former stars of a television program they were all on as children. And it sounds like Val was one of those children until she left. She left, and the show ended. Val is stunned, confused, and shaken. These people are treating her like a long-lost friend, but she has no memory of them at all, let alone of the show that they're talking about. The idea of letting them go seems painful, like losing something even more than she's already lost. She agrees to trade phone numbers with the men so they can keep in contact. But then Isaac asks a question. Does your mom know yet that your dad died? My mom's dead, Val replies. But Isaac tells her that he saw her mom just a few years ago. She lives close to where they're going for the reunion podcast. And that's when Val realizes that her dad lied to her. Not directly. He'd never said her mother was dead, just gone. But he'd let her believe that she was dead all these years, that they were alone. That's when Val decides she's going to go with these men she just met. She's going to find her mom, and she's going to find some answers. She tells them she's coming, then quickly walks it back, telling them they don't have to take her. She can find her own way if she has to. You're part of the circle, Isaac says. There's always a spot for you. Val and the boys pile into a car, and they begin to drive. It's a long trip, and by the time they're getting close, it's nearly nightfall, too late to stop in to visit Val's mom. So Isaac and the others suggest that Val stay with them, where they're going for the podcast. It's a strange house, like someone took a normal house and stretched it out to 6 stories tall. And there's a strange, pervasive hum about the place that might be the air conditioning, or something else, but it bothers Val on a deep level. Something about the house feels wrong. The last member of the circle of friends is already here, Jenny, who bustles them inside and seems less than excited to see Val. This house is where their parents lived while the show was filming, it turns out. There's 6 stories, one for each of them, plus one. Who's the 6th, Val wonders, since she's pretty sure during her quick Wikipedia search at the show that she saw there were 6 kids. No one, she's told. The interviews will start tomorrow. Val will get to meet her mother tomorrow. But this place feels strange, and everyone's acting shifty. Javi pulls Val aside, telling her not to trust anyone, that they're going to try to pin it on someone, whatever it is. As the story builds in suspense and strangeness, everything might come down to whether or not Val is able to remember the day she left Mr. Magic. But will she be able to remember what happened before the show comes back for her and her friends? This was a fun book. It was a real page turner. I'm always a fan of a story where you can't quite trust your memories, despite or perhaps because of the fact that it's an idea that scares me. The characters are all interesting, though the plot focuses mostly on Val, Jenny, and Isaac, and I did not predict the ending at all. I wouldn't say this is the scariest novel of all time. It has moments of creepiness, but mostly it has a pervasive uneasiness that builds throughout the story, supplemented by these little asides we get between chapters of online discussions about Mr. Magic. If you're looking for a book that's a little spooky, but not hide under your covers waiting for a monster to find you scary, this book might be for you. It's a fun, strange, and ultimately hopeful read that propels you along fast. And that is all the time we have for today. So I want to thank my book friends for bringing their fears and their books to today's recording. And until next time, everybody, keep reading.